Alright, these are my circuit panel boxes. First floor, second floor. These are 100 amp a piece. When we first moved here, we had two little boxes, probably half the size of these, that were overloaded. They were only 50 amped per floor. There wasn't enough power. And through the years, I have a lot of separate lines that are for all the bedroom air conditionings, the microwaves, the hot combs. They're all on separate line. Your regular wire is 14.2, which is all your light sockets are on 15 amps. And the 12.2 wire, which all the separate wire are on 20 amps. This way it gives you a separate line to run that product. Well, I had an issue today with lights flickering. First it started in the kitchen. So I put a new bulb in, figuring the bulb was going bad. And then the bathroom light would flicker. The bedroom light would flicker. You put that on, flicker, real quick. And I says, there's something wrong here. The laundry room flickering. I says, well, I got to call them. There's an issue here. So I called them up, and the lady was on the phone, and she's saying it's an internal issue. There's something to do with inside. I said, no, it's probably outside. Got a lot of wind. You got rain. You got corrosion outside. It's probably the line outside. Now, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I had a problem with the microwave. It would dim and pop off and then go back on again. So when I called him up, the guy told me right there, it's the connection on the pole. They work 24 hours a day. The guy came 11:30 at night. He cut the power off the whole house and changed the connecting on the pole. And I hadn't had an issue, but today I had an issue. So I called him up. The lady says, well, you got to come down here, turn the breaker off and on, and see if the light stops flickering. Well, you got all of these rooms that are flickering. So I came here, turned the garage lights on. They were flickering. And they never flickered before. So I turned the breaker off. I went into the first floor and turned the breaker off for the garage, then put it back on again, still was flickering. So she says, I'm going to send a service call out. They should be there 12 to 24 hour time frame. I called them up probably around 10 o'clock in the morning. The guy was here at 3 o'clock. I heard a truck beeping outside, and when I looked out, it was the public service guy. And I went out and I says, I called you about the lights flickering on there. So he went up in the pole and he put a new connection up there. He says the connections were corroded up there. I says, I just had them changed about 2 years ago. A year and a half, 2 years ago, I had a problem with the microwave. The guy came and put the connections in. He says, yeah, but they were corroded up there. I says, okay. He says, if you have any other issues, it's going to be internal issue. Then you would have to call the electrician come. So I says, since you're here, I says, why don't you do the wires coming to the house? And now when they put these meter pans in, they run a wire outside up on a conduit pole, and there's wires up there that public service or your utility company has to connect. That's their job. They will not connect them unless a licensed electrician puts these boxes in. Now, I could do all of this electric. I could put all this in, but since I don't have a license, they will not connect that wire up there. So the guy went up there and he did the connections up there since he was there. There was no other car in the driveway on this side. So he backed the truck up and did the connections. So I says, thanks. He says, well, that's because you got me here, he says. If it was a younger guy, the newer guy, wouldn't have did it by the house. He would tell you have to call up again and have another truck come. Because they're lazy. They only want to do one little job. So I says this wasn't done since '87 when this system was put in. So the wire up on the pole, he did, but the wire here he redid over. Now that could have been corroded also. He says, come here, I want to show you something. So he took the connections out. Now the connector is not a little tube where you put one wire in and the other wire in and tighten it with a gripper. This is a metal square block that the wires go in and they tighten them with a big screw and clamp them all together. He says the wire coming from the pole is aluminum. The wire in the house is copper. And when those both go together and you get any rain or something in there, the connection do not go good. But they have a new connector out now that are separate. There's two holes in it. The copper goes on one and they tighten it with a screw, and the aluminum goes on the other hole, tightened with a screw. And there's a bar that connects both of them together, so they will never corrode. So he put them on here at the house, and new ones on the pole, the newer updated version. So there's no blinking lights no more. So that's a problem. So if you ever get blinking lights, it's more than likely the outside connection. From the rain, the dampness, the wind blowing back and forth on those lines, heavy winds may loosen the connection up a little bit. So call your service company and have them come. So that was the really issue here. It wasn't the box, it was the pole with the lights blinkering. They ain't blinking in the garage now, and none of the lights are blinkering in the house.